Part 1. The Outcast's Lament. The desert wind carried dust through the streets of Willow Creek as another wagon rolled away from the McKenna trading post. Elena stood on the wooden porch, watching the last potential suitor disappear into the heat, waves dancing above the dirt road. Her hands gripped the porch railing so tight her knuckles turned white. 26 years old and still unmarried. In a town where girls became wives at 16, Elena had become something of a curiosity. The townspeople whispered about her behind closed doors, their voices mixing pity with judgment. "That McKenna girl thinks she's too good for decent folk," old Mrs. Patterson would say while buying flour. "Reading all them books, running that store like a man. No wonder she can't find a husband." Elena had heard it all before. She'd grown thick skin over the years, but today something felt different. Today's rejection had cut deeper than the rest. The sun beat down mercilessly on the Arizona territory. It was 1882, and Willow Creek was still rough around the edges. The town had grown up around the trading post her father built 15 years ago, back when Apache raids were a real threat, and every day was a fight for survival. Her father, God, rest his soul, had taught her everything about running a business. How to spot quality goods from snake oil salesmen, how to negotiate with stubborn cattlemen, how to keep books that would make a banker proud. But he'd never taught her how to be the kind of woman men wanted to marry. "Too smart for your own good," he'd say with pride when she solved a problem that stumped grown men. "You'll find someone who appreciates that brain of yours." But after he died 3 years ago, Elena discovered that intelligence wasn't what most men were looking for in a wife. They wanted someone quiet, someone who would cook and clean and bear children without asking too many questions. The trading post had flourished under her management. She'd expanded their inventory, built relationships with suppliers in Phoenix and Tucson, and even started buying directly from the Apache when the new peace treaties made it possible. The business made more money now than it ever had when her father ran it, yet every man who came calling seemed threatened by her success. Today's visitor had been different, though. Robert Caldwell owned the largest cattle ranch in the territory. He was handsome enough, with sandy hair and blue eyes that crinkled when he smiled. More importantly, he had money and respect in the community. Elena had allowed herself to hope. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe she'd finally found someone who could see past her unconventional ways. They'd sat on the porch drinking lemonade and talking about business. Robert had seemed impressed by her knowledge of trade routes and her relationships with suppliers. He'd asked intelligent questions about her expansion plans. "You've built something remarkable here," he'd said, gesturing toward the bustling store. "Your father would be proud." Elena had felt her heart lift. Finally, a man who appreciated what she'd accomplished. But then the conversation shifted. Robert started talking about marriage, about how a woman needed a man's guidance to truly succeed, how Elena had done well for herself. But imagine what she could accomplish with a proper husband to lead the way. "Of course, once we're married, you wouldn't need to worry about all this business nonsense," he'd said with that charming smile. "I'd handle the important decisions. You could focus on what women do best, making a home, raising children." Elena's blood had turned cold. "And what happens to the trading post?" "Well, I'd sell it naturally. No sense in competing with Johnson's general store. The money could go toward expanding the ranch." That's when Elena realized Robert didn't want to marry her. He wanted to marry her business, then eliminate it. "I think you should leave," she'd said quietly. Robert's smile had faltered. "Now, Elena, be reasonable. This is a generous offer. Not many men would be willing to take on a woman your age, especially one with your reputation." "My reputation? Come now. Everyone knows you're too independent for your own good, too opinionated, too—" He'd waved his hand dismissively. "Masculine, in your thinking. I'm offering to overlook all that." Elena had stood up then, her lemonade glass trembling in her hand. "Get out." But Robert wasn't finished. He'd stood too, his voice turning cold. "You're making a mistake, Elena. This is likely your last chance at marriage. No other man in his right mind would want to deal with a stubborn, headstrong woman who thinks she knows better than everyone else." I said, "Get out." Robert had tipped his hat mockingly. As you wish. But don't come crying to me when you're 40 and alone, wondering why you threw away your only chance at happiness. That had been 2 hours ago. Now Elena stood on the porch, watching the dust settle from his departing wagon, his words echoing in her mind. The afternoon heat was brutal, but she couldn't bring herself to go inside. The trading post suddenly felt too small, too full of memories and broken dreams. She needed air, space, somewhere to think. Elena changed from her dress into riding clothes, another scandalous habit that gave the townspeople something to gossip about. She saddled Starlight, her father's old mare, and headed toward the center of town. Main Street was busy with the usual afternoon crowd. Cowboys from various ranches picking up supplies, families loading wagons with goods, the sounds of hammering from the blacksmith shop mixing with laughter from the saloon. As Elena rode past, conversations stopped. Heads turned. She could feel their eyes following her, could almost hear the whispers starting up again. There goes that McKenna woman, again riding astride like a man. Heard Robert Caldwell paid her a visit today. Wonder if he finally talked sense into her. Elena tried to ignore them, but their stares felt like weights on her shoulders. By the time she reached the church at the end of Main Street, she felt ready to explode. The church social was in full swing. Tables set up under the big oak tree, covered with food prepared by the town's women. Children running around playing tag while their parents socialized. It should have been a pleasant scene, but Elena felt like an outsider looking in. She dismounted and tied Starlight to the hitching post, trying to decide if she should stay or leave. Maybe she could grab a plate of food and disappear before anyone noticed her. But it was too late. Mrs. Patterson had already spotted her. Well, look who decided to join us, the older woman said, loud enough for half the gathering to hear. Elena McKenna, in her riding clothes no less. How unconventional. Elena forced a smile. Good afternoon, Mrs. Patterson. Lovely social today. Indeed. It is. Though some of us made the effort to dress appropriately. Mrs. Patterson's eyes swept over Elena's practical riding skirt and boots with obvious disapproval. Other women began gathering around, drawn by the scent of gossip like vultures to carrion. Elena recognized them all, the wives and daughters of Willow Creek's leading families, women who had married young and settled into lives of domestic routine. Elena, dear, said Mrs. Johnson, the general store owner's wife, we heard Robert Caldwell paid you a visit today. How exciting. Elena's stomach clenched. Word traveled fast in a small town. It was a brief visit. Oh, come now, laughed Mrs. Henderson. Don't be modest. Robert Caldwell is quite the catch. The most eligible bachelor in the territory. Was he now? Elena tried to keep her voice level. The women exchanged knowing looks. Mrs. Patterson leaned in closer, her voice taking on the tone of someone sharing a delicious secret. Word is he's looking for a wife, finally ready to settle down and start a family. How wonderful for him, Elena said flatly. Indeed. Though one has to wonder. Mrs. Patterson paused dramatically. What kind of woman would appeal to a man like Robert? Someone refined, certainly, domestic. The kind of woman who knows her place. The meaning behind her words was crystal clear. Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks, but before she could respond, another voice joined the conversation. I'm sure Robert knows exactly what he wants, said Margaret Caldwell, Robert's sister. She'd appeared as if from nowhere, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. In fact, he told me all about his visit with Elena. Elena's heart sank. If Robert had talked to his sister, then the whole town would know the details by evening. And? Mrs. Patterson prompted eagerly. Margaret's smile widened. Well, let's just say my brother has decided to look elsewhere for a wife. Apparently, some women are simply too difficult to be worth the trouble. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Around her, she could see the women processing this information, filing it away to share with their husbands later. By tomorrow, everyone in Willow Creek would know that Robert Caldwell had rejected her. I see, Mrs. Patterson said with false sympathy. Well, I suppose that's not entirely surprising. Robert needs a partner who can support his ambitions, not compete with them. Exactly, Margaret agreed. A man of his stature requires a woman who understands the value of cooperation over confrontation, someone willing to be guided by masculine wisdom rather than insisting on her own way. Elena felt the conversation swirling around her like a whirlpool, pulling her deeper into humiliation. These women weren't just gossiping, they were delivering a verdict. She was too proud, too independent, too unwilling to bend to a man's will. Of course, Mrs. Henderson added thoughtfully, Elena has always been unique in her approach. Two things. Running that trading post like a man, making her own decisions, it's admirable in its own way, but hardly what most men. Part 2. The promise in the desert at sunset was Elena's sanctuary. As she rode Starlight away from Willow Creek, the familiar peace of the open wilderness began to soothe her wounded spirit. Out here, there were no judging eyes, no whispered conversations about her failures, just the endless expanse of sand, rock, and sagebrush stretching toward distant mountains. She had discovered this refuge years ago, when the weight of running the trading post and caring for her dying father became too much to bear. The desert didn't care that she was unmarried or unconventional. It simply existed, harsh and beautiful and honest in its indifference. Tonight felt different, though. The humiliation from the church social burned in her chest like a physical wound. Robert Caldwell's words echoed in her mind, mixing with the satisfied voices of the town women who had watched her breakdown. Too difficult to be worth the trouble. Elena urged Starlight into a faster pace, trying to outrun the shame that clung to her like dust. The mare responded willingly, her hooves drumming against the packed earth as they headed toward Devil's Canyon, a place Elena had explored many times before. The canyon was a maze of red rock formations and hidden caves, carved by centuries of flash floods and wind. It was also rumored to be haunted by Apache spirits, which kept most townspeople away. But Elena had never been most people, and she'd never encountered anything more dangerous than a surprised rattlesnake. As they climbed the rocky trail that led to the canyon's rim, Starlight suddenly stumbled. Elena felt the mare's gait change, immediately, the telltale uneven step that meant a thrown shoe or a stone bruise. "Easy, girl," Elena murmured, dismounting to examine Starlight's right front hoof. Sure enough, the iron shoe had worked loose and fallen off somewhere on the rocky trail behind them. Elena looked around, getting her bearings. They were about 2 miles from the canyon's edge, at least 5 miles from town. The sun had nearly set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of purple and gold. In another hour, it would be full dark, and traveling these rocky trails without proper light was dangerous for both horse and rider. She could walk Starlight back to town, but it would take hours and risk injuring the mare's unprotected hoof. Better to find shelter for the night and deal with the problem in the morning. Elena remembered seeing a shallow cave about a 1/4 mile ahead, near a natural spring that provided water for the desert wildlife. She'd stopped there before during her explorations. It would provide adequate shelter until sunrise. Leading Starlight carefully over the rocky ground, Elena made her way toward the spring. The temperature was already dropping as the desert gave up the day's heat to the star-filled sky. She'd need to build a fire to stay warm, and she was grateful for the practical skills her father had taught her. The spring gurgled softly in the gathering darkness, a welcome sound after the long, difficult day. Elena let Starlight drink while she gathered dried wood and tinder for a fire. The familiar routine of survival tasks helped calm her mind and push away the afternoon's painful memories. As she knelt to arrange kindling in the fire circle, a sound made her freeze. Not the normal desert noises she was accustomed to, the whisper of wind through stone, the distant call of a coyote, the rustle of small animals in the brush. This was something else, something that might have been footsteps on rock. Elena's hand moved instinctively to the small pistol her father had insisted she carry during desert trips. She didn't draw it, but the weight of it on her hip was reassuring. "Hello?" she called softly. "Is someone there?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice answered from the darkness beyond her small circle of preparation. "You should not be here alone." The voice was male, speaking English with an accent she couldn't immediately place. Not Mexican Spanish, but something else. something that made the hair on her arms stand up. Elena's fingers closed around the pistol grip. "Show yourself." A figure stepped into the dim starlight near the spring. Tall, lean, with long dark hair and clothing that seemed to blend with the desert shadows. Even in the poor light, Elena could see he wasn't from Willow Creek. Everything about him, his stance, his clothes, the way he moved, marked him as different. "Apache," she whispered, the word escaping before she could stop it. The man didn't deny it. Instead, he moved closer, his hands visible and empty. "You know this word, but do you know what it means?" Elena's grip on the pistol loosened slightly. His voice held no threat, only curiosity. "It means, your people, the Apache." "Apache is what others call us. We call ourselves Dine, the people. But you would not know this." He stopped about 10 feet away, clearly respecting her space. "I am called Kie. It means tall one in your language." Despite her situation, Elena found herself intrigued rather than frightened. This man, Kie, could have attacked her from the darkness if he meant harm. Instead, he'd announced himself and kept his distance. "I'm Elena," she said, though she didn't release the pistol. "Elena McKenna." Kie nodded slightly. "The woman who runs the trading post. Yes, I know of you." This surprised her. "You do?" "Word travels in the desert. You trade fairly with all people, including those your town fears. This is unusual." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I trade with whoever has good goods to offer. Business is business." "Is it?" Kie moved a little closer, and in the starlight, Elena could see his face more clearly. Strong features, dark eyes that seemed to hold depths of knowledge and experience. "Or do you simply see people as people, regardless of their blood?" The question caught her off guard. In truth, Elena had never thought much about why she was willing to trade with Apache suppliers when other businesses refused. It had just made sense. They offered high-quality goods at fair prices. "I suppose. I judge people by their actions, not their heritage," she said finally. Kie smiled at this, the expression that transformed his austere features. "This explains much about why you sit alone in the desert, crying into the darkness." Elena's face burned with embarrassment. "You saw what happened in town. I saw you ride away from your people with tears on your face. I followed to ensure your safety and found you stranded here." He gestured toward Starlight. "Your mare has lost her shoe." "Yes, I was planning to shelter here tonight and return to town in the morning." Kie considered this. "The nights are cold this time of year. You will need fire, and these rocks hold little wood." He paused. "I know a better place, a cave with protection from wind, and a spring that runs warm from deep earth." Elena hesitated. Everything she'd been taught about Apache warned her against trusting this man. But everything she'd observed in the last few minutes suggested those teachings might be wrong. "Why would you help me?" she asked. Kie was quiet for a long moment, his eyes studying her face in the starlight. "Because you are like me," he said finally. "Caught between worlds, belonging fully to neither." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. How could this stranger see so clearly what she'd been struggling to understand herself? "I don't know what you mean," she said weakly. "You are not like the other women of your town. Too strong for them to accept, too different to belong. But you are also not like the men, though you try to be. You exist in the space between, as I do." Elena felt tears, threatening again. "How can you possibly know that?" "Because I have watched you," Kie said simply. "Not stalking, not hunting, observing, learning. You interest me, Elena McKenna. You are not what I expected from your people." "And what did you expect?" Kie's expression grew serious. "Fear, hatred, the inability to see past old wounds and older prejudices. Instead, I found a woman who judges by character rather than blood, who builds rather than destroys." He paused. "Who stands alone because she refuses to become something smaller than herself." The insight was so accurate it took Elena's breath away. This Apache stranger had seen her more clearly in one encounter than Robert Caldwell had in months of courtship. "You heard what I said," she whispered. "At the church social, about no man claiming me." "Yes." Elena looked down at her hands, still gripping the unfired pistol. "It's true. I'm 26 years old and no one has ever—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Kie moved closer, until he was just an arm's length away. "May I?" Elena looked up, confused. "May you what?" "Sit. Talk. Share this fire you are building." He gestured toward the arranged kindling. "The desert is vast and the night is long. Perhaps we both have stories that need telling." Against every instinct her upbringing had drilled into her, Elena nodded. There was something about this man's presence that felt safe rather than threatening. Maybe it was his directness, or the way he looked at her without judgment. Maybe it was simply that she was tired of being alone. Kie settled cross-legged near the fire circle, moving with the fluid grace of someone completely at home in the wilderness. Elena struck a match and lit the kindling, coaxing the small flame into a proper fire as her father had taught her. "Tell me about these men who did not claim you," Kie said as the flames grew stronger. Elena laughed bitterly. "What's to tell? They wanted my father's business, not me. Or they wanted a wife who would disappear into their shadow, never question their decisions, never have thoughts of her own. And you could not be this kind of woman?" Part 3. Hearts Across Worlds. The morning sun painted the desert in shades of gold and amber as Elena woke to the sound of metal striking metal. She sat up quickly, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings, then remembered everything. The thrown shoe, the stranger in the darkness, the promise that had changed everything. Kie knelt beside Starlight, working to shoe the mare's hoof with tools Elena hadn't seen him carrying the night before. His movements were sure and practiced, and Starlight stood calmly under his hands, as if sensing his gentle intent. "Where did you get horseshoes?" Elena asked, running her fingers through her tangled hair. Kie glanced up with a small smile. "I retrieved the one your mare lost, and I carry spares. A man who travels between worlds learns to be prepared for many situations." Elena watched him work, noting the careful way he handled Starlight, the patience he showed when the mare shifted. Nervously. Everything about his actions spoke of someone accustomed to earning trust rather than demanding it. "You've done this before," she observed. "Many times. I spent 2 years working for the army as a scout and translator. I learned your people's ways with horses just as I learned their language and their customs." He finished securing the shoe and straightened. "It was educational." There was something in his tone that suggested the education had been painful. Elena wanted to ask more, but the growing light reminded her of practical concerns. "I should get back to town," she said reluctantly. "People will be wondering where I am." Kie nodded, but his expression grew serious. "And what will you tell them about your night in the desert?" Elena felt a flutter of anxiety. She hadn't thought that far ahead. How could she possibly explain spending the night with an Apache man without causing a scandal that would destroy her business and possibly endanger Kie? "I'll tell them Starlight threw a shoe and I sheltered near the spring," she said finally. "It's the truth, mostly. And if they ask how you managed to re-shoe her," Elena bit her lip. She hadn't considered that detail. "I'll say I found the shoe and managed it myself. It's not impossible." Kie studied her face carefully. "You are willing to lie to protect me?" "I'm willing to keep our business private," Elena corrected. "What happened between us last night, it's not something I want to share with people who wouldn't understand." Something shifted in Kie's expression. Relief, perhaps, or gratitude. "Then we are in agreement. What grows between us should grow in its own time, away from the judgment of others." As they prepared to part ways, Elena felt an unexpected pang of loss. The connection she'd felt with this man in the darkness seemed fragile in daylight, threatened by the practical realities of their different worlds. "Will I see you again?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Kie's eyes met hers with steady intensity. "If you wish it." "I do." "Then you will." He paused. I sometimes trade at your store. Perhaps I will have occasion to visit more frequently. Elena felt her heart lift. I'd welcome the business. The ride back to Willow Creek gave Elena time to think about what had happened and what it might mean. In the harsh light of morning, surrounded by familiar landscape, the previous night began to feel almost dreamlike. Had she really spent hours by a fire with an Apache warrior? Had he really spoken words of love and claiming that made her heart race? But the memory of his touch on her cheek, the certainty in his voice, the way he'd looked at her as if she were something precious, those details felt too real to be dreams. By the time she reached town, Elena had composed herself and prepared her story. She unsaddled Starlight and checked the mare's new shoe, marveling again at the quality of Kia's work. Then she walked into the trading post to begin another day. The bell above the door had barely stopped ringing when Mrs. Patterson bustled in, her eyes bright with curiosity. Elena, thank goodness you're safe. When we saw you ride out yesterday evening, we were concerned you might encounter difficulties. Elena forced a neutral smile. Just needed some air after the social. Starlight, threw a shoe, so I camped at Devil's Spring for the night. Alone? In the desert? Mrs. Patterson's voice rose with scandalized delight. My dear girl, that's terribly dangerous. Anything could have happened. Wild animals, bandits, Apache raiders. The Apache haven't raided in this area for over a year, Elena said mildly. And I'm well armed and experienced in desert camping. Still, Mrs. Patterson persisted, a young woman alone in the wilderness, it's simply not proper. Elena bit back the response that nothing about her life was considered proper by Willow Creek standards. Instead, she busied herself with arranging inventory while Mrs. Patterson continued to express concern and disapproval in equal measure. The morning passed quietly, with the usual stream of customers and the normal rhythm of business. But Elena found her thoughts constantly drifting to Kia, wondering where he was, what he was doing, when she might see him again. Her answer came 3 days later. Elena was helping a customer select fabric when the bell chimed, and she looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted in the doorway. Her heart jumped, then settled into a rapid rhythm as Key entered the store. In daylight, dressed in a mixture of traditional and white man's clothing, he was even more striking than she'd remembered. His presence seemed to fill the small space, drawing curious glances from the other customers. Good afternoon, he said politely, his accent barely noticeable. I have items to trade if you are interested. Elena struggled to keep her voice professional. Of course, what do you have to offer? Kia opened a leather satchel and began displaying goods on the counter. Elena's trained eye immediately recognized the quality. Intricately woven baskets, beautifully crafted silver jewelry, pottery decorated with traditional designs that were works of art in themselves. These are exceptional, Elena said truthfully, picking up a silver bracelet to examine the detailed workmanship. Where did you acquire them? They are made by the women of my family, Kia replied. My grandmother, my aunts, my cousins, they wish to trade for supplies, flour, sugar, metal tools. Metal? As they negotiated prices and quantities, Elena was aware of the other customers watching and listening. She kept the conversation strictly business, but she couldn't help noticing the way Kie's eyes lingered on her face, or the brief moment when their fingers brushed as she handed him payment. Word of the Apache trader spread quickly through Willow Creek. By evening, Elena had received visits from 3 different people warning her about the dangers of dealing with those people. It's not safe, Elena, urged Dr. Morrison, the town's physician and one of the few men who treated her with consistent respect. I know you've always been open-minded about trade, but the Apache are different. They're unpredictable. Mr. Kie has been perfectly polite and professional, Elena replied. His goods are high quality and fairly priced. I see no reason not to do business with him. Mr. Kie? Dr. Morrison raised his eyebrows. You're on a first-name basis with him? Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. He introduced himself, I believe, in treating all customers with courtesy. Dr. Morrison looked troubled. Elena, I'm speaking as a friend when I say you need to be careful. There are already whispers about your Unconventional behavior. Adding association with Apache to the list won't help your reputation. My reputation, Elena said dryly. You mean my reputation as a woman who refuses to marry the first man who offers to take over her business? That's not fair. You know I support your independence, but there are limits to what even your friends can defend. Elena understood his concern, but something rebellious rose in her chest. I appreciate your friendship, Dr. Morrison, but I'll trade with whoever offers honest goods at fair prices regardless of their heritage. After he left, Elena found herself pacing the store, agitated by the conversation. She'd expected some negative reaction to Kie's presence, but the intensity of concern surprised her. It was as if the mere fact of treating him as a normal customer had crossed some invisible line. Over the following weeks, Kie visited the trading post regularly. Sometimes he brought goods to trade. Sometimes he simply purchased supplies. Elena looked forward to these visits with an anticipation that grew stronger each time. Their conversations remained carefully professional when others were present, but Elena began to recognize subtle signs, the way Kie's eyes would find, hers across a crowded store, the careful courtesy he showed even to customers who treated him with suspicion, the quiet intelligence in his observations about business and trade. When they were alone, which happened rarely, their conversations delved deeper. You're taking a risk, Kie observed one afternoon as they completed a transaction for a large quantity of supplies. Your people do not approve of your trading with me. Elena shrugged. My people disapprove of most things I do. This is nothing new, but it could hurt your business, drive away customers. Are you trying to talk me out of trading with you? Elena asked with a slight smile. Kie's expression grew serious. I am trying to understand why you continue when it brings you trouble. Elena looked at him across the counter, taking in the strong lines of his face, the intelligence in his dark eyes. Maybe I like a little trouble, she said quietly. Something shifted in Kie's expression, a warmth that made Elena's pulse quicken. Trouble can be educational. Part 4. The test of claiming winter brought an uneasy tension to Willow Creek. The town council had indeed passed new regulations about trading licenses, though they'd been worded carefully to avoid obvious discrimination. Still, Elena could feel the noose tightening around her business with each passing week. Her relationship with Kie had deepened into something that went far beyond trading partnerships. They met secretly now, usually at dawn or dusk, when the desert offered concealment from prying eyes. These stolen moments had become the bright spots in Elena's increasingly difficult days. On this particular morning, Elena felt different as she made her way to their usual meeting place near Devil's Spring. There was something she needed to tell Kie, something that would change everything between them once again. She found him waiting by the spring, tending a small fire against the pre-dawn cold. The sight of his familiar silhouette made her heart lift, as it always did, but today the feeling was mixed with nervous anticipation. You seem troubled, Kie observed as she settled beside him. After weeks of secret meetings, he'd become skilled at reading her moods. Elena took a deep breath. There's something I need to tell you. Kie turned to face her fully, his dark eyes serious. What is it? I'm with child, Elena said simply. For a moment, Kie went very still. Then a slow smile spread across his face, not just happiness but something deeper. Wonder perhaps, or gratitude. You are certain? Yes. Dr. Morrison confirmed it yesterday. I'm about 2 months along. Kie reached for her hands, his touch gentle and reverent. How do you feel about this? Elena had expected many reactions, but not this careful concern for her feelings. Most men would have immediately started planning and making decisions for her. Instead, Kie was asking what she wanted. Scared, she admitted, but also happy. I never thought I would have children. I'd accepted that it wasn't part of my future. And now? Elena looked into his eyes, seeing her own hopes reflected there. Now I can imagine it. But Kie, you have to understand what this means for both of us. Kia's expression grew serious. Tell me, when people find out, and they will find out, there will be no hiding our relationship anymore. They'll know we're together, they'll know. Elena swallowed hard. They'll know I'm carrying an Apache's child. Kia was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. And what do you think will happen? Elena had been thinking about little else since discovering her condition. Best case, I lose the business and we're both run out of town. Worst case, she couldn't finish the sentence. Worst case, they kill me and take you away from me, Kia said quietly. Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. We could run now. Leave, before anyone knows. Start somewhere else, somewhere people don't know us. Kia studied her face carefully. Is that what you want? I want us to be safe. I want our child to be safe. That is not what I asked. Kia's voice was gentle but persistent. Is running away what you want? Elena looked around at the desert landscape she'd grown to love, thought about the business she'd built from nothing, the life she'd carved out for herself in this harsh but beautiful place. No, she said finally, but I don't see another choice. Kia was quiet for a while, and Elena could almost see him thinking, weighing options she couldn't imagine. Perhaps there is another way, he said finally. What do you mean? We make our relationship public on our terms before they force it into the open. We face the consequences together, as a united front. Elena felt her heart race with fear and something that might have been excitement. That's incredibly dangerous. Yes. But it is also honest, and it gives us control over how our story is told. Elena thought about this, turning the idea over in her mind. There was something appealing about stepping out of the shadows, about claiming their relationship openly instead of hiding it like something shameful. What would that look like? She asked. Kia smiled, and Elena saw determination in his expression. Leave that to me. 3 days later, Elena was working in the store when she heard shouting from the street. She looked through the window to see a crowd gathering near the church, their voices rising in what sounded like anger or excitement. The bell above her door chimed, and Mrs. Patterson rushed in, her face flushed with agitation. Elena! Have you seen what that Apache man has done? Elena's blood went cold. What are you talking about? He's put up some kind of announcement on the church bulletin board. People are furious. Elena's hands trembled as she untied her apron. What kind of announcement? But Mrs. Patterson was already heading back toward the door. You'd better come see for yourself. Elena followed the older woman out into the street, her heart pounding with dread and anticipation. The crowd around the church had grown larger, with people pushing forward to read whatever Kia had posted. As Elena approached, she could hear fragments of angry conversation, disgraceful behavior, mixing of the races. Something must be done. Elena pushed through the crowd until she could see the bulletin board. There, written in Kia's careful handwriting on a piece of quality paper, was a formal announcement. To the people of Willow Creek, Kia of the Apache people, formally announce my intention to marry Elena McKenna, daughter of Thomas McKenna, proprietor of the McKenna Trading Post. Miss McKenna has accepted my proposal and carries my child. We will be wed according to both Apache and Christian traditions, and we invite all people of goodwill to witness our union. Our children will be raised to honor both their heritages and to serve as bridges between our peoples. We hope that this union might begin a new era of understanding and cooperation. We ask for your blessing, but we do not require your permission. Love recognizes no boundaries of race or tradition. Respectfully submitted, Kia, known to some as Joseph Standing Bear, Elena McKenna. Elena read the announcement twice, her emotions swirling between terror and admiration. Kia had certainly taken control of their story, presenting their relationship not as a shameful secret but as something to be celebrated. The crowd's reaction was immediate and intense. "This is an outrage," shouted Robert Caldwell, his face red with anger. "We cannot allow this abomination." "That McKenna woman has gone too far this time," Mrs. Patterson declared. "Consorting with savages, bearing half-breed children, it's a disgrace to the entire town." Elena felt anger flare in her chest at the ugly words, but before she could respond, another voice cut through the chaos. Enough! Dr. Morrison pushed through the crowd, his face stern. That's enough ugly talk. Elena McKenna is a member of this community, and she deserves our respect, not our slander. Respect? Robert's voice was incredulous. For a woman who would betray her own race? For a woman who has contributed more to this town's prosperity than most of you combined, Dr. Morrison replied firmly. Her personal choices are her own business. But the doctor's defense was drowned out by the rising tide of anger from the crowd. Elena could see that the situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Where is he? Someone shouted. Where's the Apache? Probably hiding like the coward he is. We should teach him what happens to his kind when they don't know their place. Elena's blood ran cold as she recognized the shift in the crowd's mood. This was no longer just about disapproval. It was becoming dangerous. He's not hiding, Elena said loudly, stepping forward. And he's not a coward. The crowd turned toward her, and Elena felt the weight of dozens of hostile stares. But she'd spent years building courage, and she wouldn't fail now. Kia asked me to marry him because he loves me, she continued, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet street. And I said yes because I love him too. If that makes me a disgrace in your eyes, then so be it. Elena, don't be a fool, Robert said, his tone shifting to false concern. You're clearly not thinking straight. We can fix this. Send the Apache away, find a proper husband for you, raise the child as white. The child is half Apache, Elena said firmly, and proud to be so. Robert's mask of concern slipped. Then you've made your choice, and you'll face the consequences. Elena was about to respond when she heard hoofbeats approaching. The crowd turned to see Kie riding down Main Street, sitting tall in the saddle, his face calm despite the hostile crowd waiting for him. He dismounted near the church and walked toward the bulletin board, seemingly oblivious to the anger surrounding him. The crowd parted reluctantly, creating a path lined with hostile faces. Kie, Elena breathed, both relieved and terrified to see him. He smiled at her, an expression of such warmth and confidence that Elena felt her fear begin to recede. Elena, I trust you have seen my announcement? We've all seen it, Robert snarled, and we're here to tell you it's not acceptable. You need to leave town, now. Kie turned to face Robert, his expression politely curious. And why would I do that? Because you don't belong here. Because we won't tolerate your kind corrupting our women. Kie's eyes hardened slightly. Elena is not your woman. She is mine, by her own choice and mine. We belong to each other. Not if we have anything to say about it, Robert said, and Elena saw several men in the crowd nod agreement. But you do not, Kie said simply. Have anything to say about it. This is between Elena and me. The tension in the crowd was rising to a dangerous level. Elena could see hands moving toward gun belts, could feel the violence building in the air like electricity before a storm. Part 5. A Love for Every Lifetime. The sound of hoofbeats pounded behind them as Elena and Kie rode hard into the desert night. Elena's mare, Starlight, was strong but carrying double weight as they fled Willow Creek. Behind them, torches bobbed, like angry stars in the darkness, marking the progress of their pursuers. How many? Elena called over the thunder of hooves. Kie glanced back, his experienced eye counting the lights. 8, maybe 10 men. They're gaining ground. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, but not just from fear. Mixed with terror was an unexpected sense of freedom. For the first time in years, she wasn't trying to fit into someone else's idea of what her life should be. She was choosing her own path, dangerous as it might be. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere they cannot follow, Kie replied. Trust me. Elena did trust him, more than she'd ever trusted anyone. As they rode deeper into the desert, she found herself thinking about the store burning behind them, about the life she was leaving forever. Strangely, the loss felt more like relief than grief. They rode for hours, following paths that seemed invisible to Elena, but were clearly familiar to Kie. The desert landscape grew more rugged as they climbed into the foothills, the terrain becoming too difficult for their pursuers to follow in darkness. Finally, as dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold, Kie led them into a narrow canyon Elena had never seen before. The walls rose high on either side, carved by centuries of wind and water into fantastic shapes. A small stream ran through the center, providing water for the horses and creating a ribbon of green vegetation in the otherwise harsh landscape. "We'll rest here," Kie said, dismounting and helping Elena down from Starlight. Elena looked around the hidden canyon, marveling at its beauty and secrecy. "How did you know about this place?" "My grandmother brought me here when I was a boy," Kie replied, leading the horses to water. "She said it was a place of power, where the spirits of our ancestors still walked, a place where those who needed sanctuary could find it." Elena settled on a flat rock near the stream, suddenly exhausted. The events of the past day felt like a dream. The announcement, the confrontation, the fire, the flight into darkness. Her old life was truly over, burned away as surely as her trading post. "What happens now?" she asked. Kie sat beside her, his arm coming around her shoulders. "Now we begin again. Here, in the desert? For now. Until we decide where we want to build our future." Elena leaned into his warmth, drawing strength from his calm certainty. "Aren't you angry about having to leave everything behind?" Kie was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "I have spent my life between worlds, never fully belonging to either. Home for me has always been a feeling rather than a place." He turned to look at her, his dark eyes warm with love. "You are my home now, Elena. You and the child you carry. Where we are matters less than that we are together." Elena felt tears spring to her eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming rightness of his words. "I love you," she whispered. "And I love you," Kaya replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Enough for every lifetime, as I promised." They spent 3 days in the hidden canyon, recovering from their flight and planning their next moves. During the day, Kie hunted small game and gathered edible plants, while Elena worked to adapt her business skills to their new reality. During the evenings, they talked for hours, sharing stories of their childhoods, their dreams, their hopes for their unborn child. It was during one of these evening conversations that Elena first felt the baby move, a flutter so faint she almost missed it. "Kie," she said suddenly, pressing her hand to her still flat belly. He was beside her instantly, his hand covering hers. "What is it?" "The baby. I think I felt movement." They sat in perfect stillness, waiting. Then it came again, the tiniest flutter like a butterfly wing against the inside of her skin. Kia's face lit up with wonder. "Our child grows strong like his father," Elena said, then paused. "Or her father. We don't know yet." "It does not matter," Kia said firmly. "Boy or girl, this child will be loved beyond measure, will be taught to walk proudly between worlds, to see strength in difference rather than shame." On the 4th day, Kie announced that it was time to move on. "There is a place I want to show you," he said. "A valley where 3 streams meet, far from any town or settlement. It is beautiful and fertile, with good water and game." "Sounds perfect," Elena said. "How far?" 2 days' ride, perhaps 3 if we travel carefully." They broke camp that morning, packing their few possessions onto the horses. As they rode out of the canyon, Elena looked back once, grateful for the sanctuary it had provided but ready to face whatever came next. The journey to Kie's Valley took them through some of the most beautiful country Elena had ever seen. They traveled by hidden paths through mesas and canyons, past ancient ruins and sacred sites that Kie explained with quiet reverence. Elena began to understand that they were not just fleeing from something, but traveling toward something. A new life in a place where they could be themselves without apology. The valley, when they finally reached it, exceeded Elena's expectations. It was a hidden paradise, surrounded by protective cliffs but open to the sky. 3 streams converged at its center, creating a natural oasis of grass and trees. The air was sweet with the scent of wildflowers, and birds sang from every branch. "It's beautiful," Elena breathed. "How do you know about this place?" "It belonged to my mother's people, before they were forced onto the reservation," Kia explained. "My grandfather used to bring his family here during the summer months. When I was old enough to understand, he taught me the way." Elena could see the pain in his eyes as he spoke of his family's displacement, but also something else. Hope, perhaps, or determination. "Could we really live here?" she asked. "If you wish it. We would need to build shelter, prepare for winter. It would not be easy, especially at first." Elena looked around the valley, imagining what it could become. She pictured a small cabin by the stream, gardens planted in the rich soil, perhaps even a few animals. It wouldn't be the trading post she'd lost, but it could be something better, a true home, built by their own hands and free from the judgment of others. "Yes," she said firmly. "Let's build our life here." The next months passed in a blur of hard work and quiet happiness. Kie's knowledge of desert survival, combined with Elena's organizational skills and business sense, proved to be a powerful combination. They built a sturdy cabin using timber from the surrounding cliffs and adobe bricks made from the valley's clay. Elena planted a garden using seeds Kia had gathered, while he hunted and fished to provide protein for their growing family. As Elena's pregnancy advanced, their preparations became more urgent. They needed to be ready for winter and for the arrival of their child. Kia made trips to distant settlements to trade for supplies, salt, metal tools, fabric for baby clothes. He was careful to visit places where he wasn't known, where their story hadn't preceded them. Elena's skills as a trader proved invaluable even in their isolated valley. She began making goods that Kia could trade. Woven baskets using techniques she learned from watching him, preserved foods that would keep well during transport, even simple remedies using plants she'd learned to identify. It was during one of Kia's trading trips that Elena first met their nearest neighbors. She was working in the garden when she heard horses approaching. Her hand moved instinctively to the rifle Kia had insisted she keep nearby, but the voices she heard were speaking Apache. 3 riders emerged from the canyon entrance, 2 men and a woman, all clearly Apache, all looking surprised to find someone living in their hidden valley. The older of the 2 men spoke first, his words in Apache too rapid for Elena to follow. The woman replied, then all 3 of them looked at Elena with expressions of curiosity rather than hostility. "You are the white woman who travels with Kaye," the woman said in careful English. Elena straightened, meeting their gazes steadily. "I am Elena. And you are?" "I am Ayana," the woman replied. "This is my brother Takoda and my husband Nalnish. We heard stories of Kie's woman, the one who chose love over her own people." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I chose what was right for me." Ayana smiled, and Elena was surprised to see approval in her expression. "That is what we heard. Also that you carry Kie's child." "Yes." The 3 Apache exchanged glances, some communication passing between them that Elena couldn't interpret. Then Ayana dismounted and approached Elena slowly. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward Elena's swollen belly. Elena nodded, and Ayana placed her hands gently on the curve of her stomach. The baby responded immediately, kicking strongly enough that Ayana laughed with delight. "Strong child," she said. "Strong like the father, stubborn like the mother." Elena couldn't help but smile. "You know Kie well?" "He is my cousin," Ayana replied. "And you are family now if you will have us." Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. After months of isolation, the offer of acceptance and kinship was almost overwhelming. "I would be honored," she said. That evening, when Kie returned from his trading trip, he found Elena in animated conversation with his Apache relatives. The joy on his face when he saw them together told Elena everything she needed to know about how important this acceptance was to him.